Hello and welcome to DesignChat, the best live design discussion on the internet. I'm your host, Ryan McGovern. On Twitter, I'm at Hoopajube and at DesignChat. Every week we get together with some of the coolest people from the design community, and we vent, we get amped, sometimes we drink, and we coexist. So this week we are very honored to be talking to two of the rock stars from Carsonified.com, Allison House and Nick Pettit.
Hello, hello.
Bravo. Thank you for coming. Yeah, this was really sort of a happenstance meeting, wasn't it? It was just yesterday that you guys were doing a live broadcast from your studio, and I jumped on and got to ask a couple questions, and I was really excited to see you guys doing that. And I was like, hey, come on my show. And you were like, heck yeah, and here we are. I love how that stuff happens.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. We started doing these QA sessions every Tuesday at noon, and we just sort of started randomly, I guess, and we've kept up with it, but it's been a lot of fun. People have been asking a lot of really great questions, so hopefully we'll get some good questions tonight.
Yeah.
Definitely. So that's going to be an ongoing thing every Tuesday at 1?
Every Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST.
Yeah, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe that's 9 a.m. Over on... No, not GMT. It's 5 p.m. GMT and 9 a.m. over in California.
I am horrible with those times. Like, I am so, time-centric. It's all about me, really. I'll just spit out the central time, and whatever your deal is whatever your deal is, right? Because, yeah, I was an art major, and math, not so much. So, all right, let's get into a little bit more about you guys, your histories, where you came from, and how you got hooked up with Carsonified.
Origin stories.
That's a long story. Okay. Do you want to go first, or
no?
You want me to go first?
We've got all night. Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So, I guess my career in design, or I started thinking about design back in middle school and high school. So this was around early 2000s, I guess. And I just started getting into art, and I started using this program called Photoshop, you may have heard of. And
no,
no, never. No, I just really enjoy traditional art a lot, and I really enjoy the fundamentals of art. I'm actually writing a series of PDF books right now about the elements and principles of art for web professionals, because I don't think that's something that people are really talking about enough in the web industry. But anyway, yeah, so I went to a high school for the arts, and it was really, really intense. It was on par with some art colleges, I would say. Every day I had 2 hours of studio art, and I had an hour of art history, and I did that for about 4 years. Well, because it was high school. And then all throughout this, in parallel, I was into the web. I've always been into the web. I made my first web page when I was 11 years old, and I did it in front page and dragged out the tables and everything, and in the WYSIWYG editor, and I've sort of just been into it ever since. And so I've always been into computers, and I've always been into art, and the web was just a really great way for me to combine both of those interests. So later, when I got into college, I started doing some freelance stuff, and I was really into sort of just doing everything myself. I was very self-reliant. I didn't want to get a job. I wanted to just do my own thing and make my own apps, make stuff for clients and customers. I didn't want to have a boss. Then eventually, my buddy Jim, whom I also met in college, he convinced me that, I should probably go for this internship that he was at, where they were doing software for healthcare professionals. And so I did that for 3 years, and it was a really good experience. I got a lot of experience in dealing with very complex UI challenges. So, for example, like, if you have a list of 3,000 things and you have to pick 2 things off of that list, like, what's the best way to do that? Just like really crazy problems like that. And then after that, actually, I'm sorry, during that, about a year ago, Jim and I, at the time, we had a company on the side. We were sort of like floundering around trying to figure out what we wanted to do as a company. And I was like, maybe we should start a video podcast, because I think we have a lot of knowledge that we can share with other people, and they'd be interested in hearing what we have to say. And we can go on like a sponsorship model and just see, who we can get.
Are you referring to
sponsor
the
us,
world famous doctype.tv?
I could be, yes. I am referring to doctype.tv. And yeah, we just sort of got inspired. I guess a lot of it had to do with Gary Vaynerchuk, because, we saw Wine Library and we were like, we really know our stuff. We can do this.
You can crush it.
Yeah, we wanted to crush it and and get out of the cubicle life, basically. And we started this video podcast. When we started, we really had no idea what we were doing. We knew we wanted to have really high production values, or as high as we possibly could, afford to do. And we also knew that we wanted it to be scheduled. We wanted it to be a show, not necessarily a podcast, I guess. We wanted it to be as much like a TV show about web design and development as possible. And we ended up calling it Doctype, and we released our first episode on December 1st, 2009. And I think, yesterday we just released episode 51. So we've been doing it for, a little over a year now, and it's been a heck of a learning experience. And it's actually how I ended up getting my job at Carsonified, teaching for Think Vitamin membership. So basically, I was sort of at the end of my days at my last job. It was exhilarating for a long time, but I was just kind of sick of it, basically, for a lot of reasons. But anyway, I was laying in bed one morning, actively not going to work. I was just like,
Reddit, right?
Yeah,
He was reading Reddit on his phone.
right.
In bed.
Like I was like reading Reddit on my iPhone, and I was like on Twitter and stuff. And I saw a tweet from Ryan Carson, and he was like, "Look, we're looking for a designer and a developer that can do screencasting for us." And I clicked through to like the job description, and I just immediately I emailed Jim. I was like, "Dude, should we do this? Like, we can totally do this." And we emailed Ryan, and he was like, "Oh man, I've seen Doctype." Like, we had established a relationship with Carsonified at that point already, because we did like interviews and stuff at Future Web Apps Miami earlier that year. But we contacted Ryan, and he's like, "Oh man, I didn't know that you guys were even available. Sure, And so we sort of made our audition screencasts, and he thought they were totally awesome, and now we're here. And that was back in May of 2010 when we started here.
And that's how you became the Batman.
That's right. That's how I became the Batman.
The Batman. It's awesome how all that stuff happens.
So
just real quick before Allison goes, I want to remind everybody in the chat room, you can ask questions if you click on the light bulb right there. If you've got a question, you can either type it in and submit it, and we'll put it on the screen and give you credit for it. Or if you've got a webcam, start thinking about a really good question, and then you can get on camera, and then you guys can ask them directly. So please, guys, do a video, please. Get on. All right, cool. Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, do a video. Allison, your turn.
Okay. Let's see. I mean, I think similar to Nick, I kind of, you start doing the art thing and then you segue into design. And I think that's a lot of designers, right? So I made my first website probably when I was 11, and it was about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it was terrible. There were like stakes everywhere. It was like straight GeoCities looking. But the spark didn't really start just yet. There were a couple more years of bad like front page designing and making websites in Word and just generally going in the wrong direction with design. But then I started reading some blogs and I learned the right way. And I was on Windows at the time, don't hate. And I opened up Notepad and I started, hacking things out and looking at viewing source, and eventually became all of this. But I think in school I started studying digital media. There's this program at the University of Central Florida, which
that's right. I went to the University of Central Florida, by the way.
Yes.
I left that out.
Important to note.
Yeah.
Top school.
Oh, yeah.
But I did see someone in the chat say go Knights, so indeed. But I started out in this program, and I felt like I was just so passionate about web design that I could actually study something else. So instead of digital media, I went with management information systems, and got a little business education in there, and then a little bit of systems analysis stuff. And I kind of just rolled with the web thing. So as soon as I got out of school, I went to a local startup and started working with them, and did a lot of work with Ruby on Rails. So when I saw the Carsonified posting, I had actually been on an episode of DocType at that point, and which, by the way, if you guys haven't seen this show, for two dudes who are just making a show by themselves, who do all the editing and the setup, I mean, it is an amazing show. It's really good. It's DocType TV, doing the plug for you.
Check it out.
So yeah, I saw this posting, and every single component in it was like me. I'd actually spent 3 years teaching in college, so the teaching component was obviously a really good fit, and then there was everything else, all the rest of the skill set, HTML5, CSS3. So Ryan Carson made me jump through a few hoops, and basically it was a series of, there was like a brief interview and then kind of multiple design challenges, and then I got the job. So now I'm here, and that's how I became the Batman.
Which brings us to Carsonified, which seems to attract so much great talent and have such great content on their site. For people who are absolutely, completely not familiar with Carsonified and the sort of family that lies within of everything that you guys do, why don't you give a brief sort of wrap-up of what that world is?
Yeah, sure. So Carsonified really started out as an events business. It started with just Ryan Carson and his wife, Jill. And they started doing these workshops for web designers and web developers, and very quickly that evolved into conferences and events. And they have these really cool events called Future of Web Design, or FODE, and Future of Web Apps, called FOA. And they do these all over the world. Well, at least in the Western Hemisphere. They do events in London. They do events in New York, and we have FOA Vegas coming up in June. Yeah. End of June is Future Web Apps Vegas, and they just get, we got really amazing speakers. Like it's really awesome. Like
top notch.
The speakers that we have at our events. But so that's the events side of the business, and that's sort of the heart and soul of Carsonified and how we can do what we do. Now, Think Vitamin membership is a new side of the business, and Ryan has been treating it as a startup within Carsonified, which is a really cool way to kind of start a new part of the business, to kind of keep the financials separate. So Think Vitamin membership, for those of you that aren't familiar, is basically training for web designers and web developers. Yep. I am a web designer, and I teach all the web design videos on Think Vitamin membership. And Jim, who is sitting right over here, is a web developer, and he teaches all of the web development videos. And we've been doing it for about a year now, and it's going really, really well. We just launched a new thing with Think Vitamin membership called Masterclasses, and they're these 2-hour, deep dives into topics like CSS3, HTML5, jQuery, and people seem to be really enjoying them, and we're really happy with the way they've turned out.
Yeah.
So we have a studio for all of this in Orlando, Florida, which is just a short drive from Disney World. And we're up to, 5 people in the Orlando office now. So Carsonified is based in Bath, in the UK, which is 99 miles west of London. And it just kind of happened that, Jim and I were in Orlando when they wanted to start up Think Vitamin membership. And that's sort of how this whole office evolved. So we have Jim and myself, and we're the teachers for Think Vitamin membership. Allison is our designer, and she does all the cool stuff on the site. And we have 2 video editors right now, Michael and John. And John actually just started this week because we're kind of swamped with the amount of video that we're putting out. But it's awesome. We love it. It's really, really fun. So yeah, so that is Carsonified. Go ahead.
So some people say the best way to learn and to experience is to teach, right? And so I want to get your guys' perspective on, because it's one thing to be challenged with a project, ruminate on it for a little while, and choose a decision, and especially with working with clients, it can be such a big challenge. But you guys have one level on top of that, having to break down the problem, how people might frame that in their heads, and try to understand how it might be understandable for the wider masses, and then write that out. I want to hear your perspective on, what was the first time you kind of went through that process, and when did you learn that you sort of had a talent for it?
Yeah, so I guess it started with DocType, because I remember being at, I think it was Future of Web Apps Miami 2009, and I saw Jason Fried, this might be wrong, but I saw Jason Fried up on stage from 37 Signals, and he was talking about byproducts and how every business produces these byproducts, and that for the web industry, the biggest byproduct is knowledge, right? Because we all have to do this stuff every day, and we all know how to do it, so why not share that with other people, right? Because you go through these, weird situations and experiences, and you learn a lot just doing this stuff. And Jim and I had done, I'd done client work in the past, and we had lots of different, interesting experiences programming together. And we had been working at this company making really complex web applications for a couple years by that point. And that idea of byproducts really stuck with me. So I thought, we should start talking about this and teaching other people, and not just keep this knowledge to ourselves. And prior to that, we had done talks at bar camps and smaller events like that. And so we knew that we were able to teach other people, judging by the reaction from bar camps. But honestly, with DocType, it was really a trial by fire. We really didn't know if we were going to be able to teach people effectively. But I think the key to it is to be able to give people something that they can take away and apply to their website right away. We try to do that with every episode of DocType, and that's definitely the approach that we've taken with Think Vitamin membership videos. Think Vitamin membership goes way more in depth than we're able to do with DocType, and it's a whole end-to-end teaching platform. So we start from the absolute basics of HTML and CSS, and we get into really complex, jQuery and Ruby on Rails, all the new like MongoDB stuff, really advanced UX stuff. And so when you're teaching somebody something very basic, I think that's the most challenging thing, because being so close to your work all the time, it's hard to break it down because it becomes like a second language. So you have to take it really slowly. Like with with the first video about HTML, I literally just start out by saying, open up, a text editor like Notepad if you're on Windows, and type something, save it, and then open it up in a web browser, and look, you can make stuff appear in the browser. It's that easy, right? And then, of course, we work our way up and get into really advanced stuff. So I guess, teaching is something that I've been learning as I go along, but we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from people saying that, they've learned a whole lot, or Think Vitamin membership allowed them to build their latest website, and, that's the stuff that gives us the warm and fuzzies and,
absolutely.
And lets us know that we're doing something right. So yeah.
We've got our first video call here, so I'm going to go ahead and take it from Pipo Zoft. Pipo, hello, welcome to the show.
I know this guy.
Go ahead and ask a question.
Hey man.
Hi there.
Hey, how are you? I hope you guys get the... Yeah, Nick told me. Anyway, I was gonna ask you what you guys think is the future, right? The immediately future of web with HTML5 and CSS3.
Sure, yeah. So I think the immediate future of web design right now is probably responsive web design. If you haven't heard about responsive web design, like I highly recommend you check it out. Basically, for people watching that don't know what responsive web design is, it's basically the application of CSS3 media queries to allow you to take the same HTML and make it work across multiple devices and different screen resolutions. So you can take the same HTML and it will work. We got your stickers, by the way. It'll work on all sorts of different devices, like a 27-inch iMac, a small smartphone, and I think the thing that's really cool about responsive web design is that you don't have to make a separate website for every different device. So you don't take the approach of making like the iPhone site and the Android site and the iPad site, because that's just crazy, right? There's always new devices, there's always new screen resolutions, and people so far have been using responsive web design to make their sites work on mobile devices and these new tablet devices like the iPad. But I think that something that at least that I would like to see is responsive web design used to create television interfaces, because I might be in the minority here, but I have a PC hooked up to my HDTV, and that's how I watch TV. I don't have cable. I just watch, Hulu, Netflix, YouTube, whatever's on the internet, right? And I would really appreciate it if these websites created interfaces for televisions. They could recognize that, oh, you're at 1920 by 1080. That's a TV resolution. And there's other things you can do, like device detection to see, what kind of screen you're on. But basically, you can detect if you're on a TV and then be like, oh, okay, well, because you're sitting so far away from the screen, then let's, make larger buttons and make the text more legible at those distances. And you can also do cool stuff like enabling keyboard navigation and stuff like that. But yeah, so I think that's the immediate future, is people taking notice of responsive web design and using that to the fullest extent. What about you, Allison?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's kind of interesting that it's not just limited to making different style sheets for different devices. It could also just be when you resize the window, things change up a little bit to accommodate that type of view. And we were talking about this yesterday. As far as maybe more the visual design side, in the upcoming year, I think we're going to see a lot of creative typography. And in the last year, people were learning how to use Add Font Face. It kind of exploded. Okay, here's Add Font Face. Everyone was talking about how we can use it. And now that we've got a good handle on that, I think people are going to start doing more interesting things with that. We actually have been looking at a couple examples of that in the office.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
I think font face is
hold
really
on one second. People, that was a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming out and accepting your call. That was awesome.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I really think that, you know, we are in a baby step sort of state, right, where a great number of people have just jumped into the industry, maybe gotten their first or second jobs, experimented a little bit on their sides. Then you've got all the people who haven't gotten a job yet, and they're just doing cool stuff on their own at home, finally getting used to these interfaces, and now we'll be at a point where they can actually express themselves. And we're going to see a lot of interesting things happen once those tools are available to everyone. And I think we're seeing that a lot right now. So I couldn't agree more. I couldn't hope for more than better typography right now on the web.
Yeah, definitely. But I see sort of a parallel. Like when you're growing as a designer, you start out and you make these sort of simple things and you say, oh man, that looks so good. I'm great at Photoshop or whatever. But then you start to add complexity and you learn how to add complexity and you realize that things look better and better as you learn to do that well. And I think that sort of applies with any new technique or new technology that we're seeing, where you start out just sort of using it in a simple way and everyone goes, man, that's awesome. I mean, if we look at old websites, we already know what this is, or I don't know, old movies or whatever. And then, you know, as you learn how to use it, you learn how to be more creative with it. And eventually, I think we're going to see websites looking totally different, you know.
Allison, we're going to aim this next question at you from Little Bear Mango, who wants to know, what is the best way to get into web design coming out with a BFA in graphic design? Any suggestions?
Yeah, well, actually, Think Vitamin membership is a really good way to do this. And I think we get questions about this fairly often, about how to sort of move from just graphic design to going into web design. And if you join up, and there's a couple of free videos on there so you can see if you want to, but it walks you through just the most basic possible. This is how you start out with a text editor and create a web page, and then it brings you up to the more advanced stuff with video tutorials pretty slowly, or really as fast as you'd like. Right. And this is something, I mean, I think when I started out, what I was mostly doing is experimenting with viewing the sources of web pages and copying what I saw, which I think that sort of hands-on approach is really useful. But if I had had something like this, I think I would have been where I'm at now a lot sooner.
Right.
So if I've never seen a piece of code, I don't know what CSS is, I don't know what HTML is, I don't know what HTML5 is. I mean, none of that. I've watched the movie Hackers, and I'm like, I want to make websites. Like, what is it? Do I go by websites for dummies, or what's the very first thing that I research if I want to do anything, other than signing up for a Think Vitamin membership?
Which, of course, you should do. Yeah, I mean, I think buying a book can be really helpful. Like Allison said, I think taking a really hands-on approach is good. If you open up your web browser, you can go and view the source of a web page. But yeah, I think just trying to do it is the most important thing. Just trying to take a practical approach. It's also good to have maybe a project in mind, like wanting to create a blog or a personal site or something really simple like that, because that can give you a goal to work towards. And when you do that, you'll find all sorts of interesting problems along the way.
Yeah, so if you just want to start researching, your core skill set is going to be HTML and CSS.
Right. Definitely.
I forgot to remind you guys, actually, we're going to keep on doing this Q&A and taking some questions from the audience. We're at 8:30 now. We've got another half hour to go. But, Nick and Allison, I have a surprise for you guys. At the end of the chat, I want you guys to ask a question of the chat room, right? And we'll finish it with that.
Okay.
Oh,
so,
yes.
and if they've got good questions or good observations, they can submit them as a text question. We'll bring those up, or we'll read through some of the chat room stuff too. So start thinking about that on the sort of back burner as we go along. But I wanted to take another question really quick from Padian Com at Twitter, who wants to know: is it important to get an iMac or MacBook Pro if you're a designer?
Well, I don't know.
It kind of depends. I spent many years on a PC, and I learned to use Photoshop on a PC. And I mean, if I don't have my MacBook with me, I still use it. And I don't think that that's really held me back at all as a designer. I've learned just as well how to design visually or do web design or whatever. But I like MacBooks.
Yeah.
And I find the workflow is easier on them, just given the applications that are available. And it's kind of nice because everyone else in the office uses them, and you see that a lot in design, that everyone's on a Mac. So, you guys can kind of speak the same language in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely going to be easier. If you're just getting started with design, I highly encourage you try and learn about art. Like, just learn how to draw. That's going to help you 1,000 times more than any piece of hardware or equipment that you can buy. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't know how to draw, or drawing just isn't my thing. But it's really important that you try and learn. And I think the reason a lot of people feel like they aren't good at drawing is because they stopped when they were like 5 years old. And if you stopped writing when you were 5 years old, you probably wouldn't be very good at writing, right?
Right.
And so it's just a skill you have to redevelop, learn how to use the right side of your brain, and try to draw from direct observation. I think that can help a lot as a designer. But is it important to get an iMac or any kind of Apple computer? I think that it's important to get a good computer. So whatever that is to you, and it's important to get the best computer that you can afford, because as a designer, a lot of times the computer is going to be your tool. Especially as a web designer.
Yeah.
And so if it's your profession and it's something that you're doing every day, it's worth saving up and spending the extra and getting the best thing that you can afford. So yeah.
Nick, I couldn't agree more on first of all, learning to draw, right? And I want to add an addendum to that. It's not, for me, the advice I would give is not so much learn how to draw like the most amazing landscape or the best impressionist painting. You don't have to be a worldwide renowned artist. What we're talking about, I think, and you can tell me if you disagree or agree, is you have to learn how to express yourself visually, right? And when you're thinking about a project and you're thinking about ideas, it's kind of like a dream. An idea can come to you really quick, and you might not fully grasp it yourself the first time you think of it. So you have to be able to get it out of your head and onto paper. And the best way to do that is to be able to draw. Be familiar with a pencil. Do research on symbols. The history of symbols, the history of typefaces. I mean, do as much reading as you can on all of that, and iconography, and that will help you to be able to translate your idea from your head to paper so that you can tell someone else. Because once someone else is excited about that idea, a project can take off, and that's where a lot of magic happens. So if you can't get your idea on the paper, a lot of projects stop there.
Yeah, I think part of that is just having to do things quickly. Sometimes you have this idea and it's going to be gone. And sketching lets you do that really fast. But even with web stuff, with wireframing, for example, it's so much faster for me to get out a Moleskine and get on that gridded paper and draw my website idea. It's going to take me way longer if I were trying to wireframe things out on a computer.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right. And before we take any more questions, I have to bring this up. Today's March 2nd, 2011, because we were just talking about Apple PC sort of deals. The iPad 2 was announced today. I want to get your guys' first impressions. If you saw, did you see any of the coverage? And does it mean anything to you?
Oh, yeah.
As far as personally being in your own creative world, or the idea of showing people things on iPads? Tell me what you thought today.
Well, the biggest thing for me was just seeing if the screen resolution changed, because that, as a web designer, is the thing that would have affected me the most.
Yeah.
Screen resolution is the same. It's not really any new hardware that's going to affect web design. I saw that there were improvements to Safari, which is good. The graphics processor is a lot better than the previous iPad. And for those of you that don't know, CSS3 transitions, animations, and transforms are all processed on the GPU in iOS, or on any iOS device, and that leads to really smooth frame rates in the Safari web browser that you may not necessarily see even on a desktop browser. So with a better processor in the iPad, that's just going to mean that you can do even more crazy 3D stuff with CSS. But whether or not I'm actually gonna buy one, I mean, I have an iPad now. I may or may not upgrade. I don't know. I'm kind of underwhelmed, I guess. I was expecting there to be like one feature where it's just like, wow, I did not expect that. But I was kind of underwhelmed, I guess. I seem to be sort of alone there.
I didn't catch
Allison?
it, so I just learned a lot.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right, then moving on. We're going to take another text question here. Revolve Web wants to know, yeah, please. In your opinion, would you include a fully non-JavaScript support as responsive web design? I have no idea what that means, so please explain it to me.
All right. Well, no, I really wouldn't worry about JavaScript being turned off in the browser. It is just not a problem. Like in practical situations, like 99% of web traffic is going to have JavaScript turned on. If you've never browsed the web without JavaScript,
everything is broken.
Yeah, you should try it sometime. Just open up like Firefox and use the web developer toolbar and just turn off JavaScript and start browsing the web. Like, you're just not going to get very far at all. So any modern web application is going to require JavaScript, and I don't really think it's important to worry about it being turned off at all, really. So that, I think, answers that question, hopefully. I can't really tell how it's relating to responsive web design there, but I don't know, maybe there's something I'm not aware of, but yeah, I wouldn't worry about JavaScript being turned off ever.
And if they didn't answer, if he didn't answer your question, you can tweet him, NickRP at Twitter. Little Bear Mango back again with good questions. Thank you. Another part to my question: should I start with CMS or start a website from scratch?
Depends what you want to do. I mean, if this is someone who's learning web design, then you probably want to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And if you're making like a customized one-page website, I think starting from scratch is the way to go. I think sometimes people use CMSs where they don't need to, and kind of have this whole big back-end system. But we were recently talking about Tumblr a little bit and how it's a CMS to an extent, but it's highly simplified, right?
Yeah, I think. I mean, people are going to flame us for this probably, but I think Tumblr can be used as a CMS. I think that, with a really cool theme, using their templating language, you can create a pretty interesting blog, and you can post all sorts of different content to that. But anyway, whether or not you should start with a CMS or start from scratch, if you're learning, definitely try and start from scratch. It's important that you know how all this stuff is working, and that when you do start using things like CSS frameworks, JavaScript frameworks like jQuery, or even backend frameworks like Ruby on Rails, it's important that you know, at least to an extent, how those things are doing what it is that they're doing. It's never a good idea to just sort of use code without understanding it to some extent. So if you're just starting out and you're learning, please start from scratch. You'll do yourself a favor and you'll learn how to walk before you learn how to run. But if you're on a tight deadline, you need to make this website where the client can edit pictures or something like that, then yeah, of course you're going to want to start with the CMS, because why reinvent the wheel? So yeah, hope that answered your question.
We get a lot of questions about sort of client relationships on this show. A lot of freelancers who are dealing one-on-one with a client, or even people inside of agencies who, they've got 5 levels of communications before they even get to get a message to a client. I would imagine you guys view your customers, the people who subscribe, and the people who you're teaching as your sort of clients. What's your sort of like relationship with them and the sort of feedback that you get?
I think we try to be the best customer support team possible.
Yeah.
And that tends to, I mean, I think people notice that, and so I think our customers tend to be expecting this from us and super nice to us, and they're awesome. We have our orientation toward the customers is just, we love our customers and we'll pretty much do anything for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we always get a lot of really positive feedback on that.
Yeah, one thing that we are doing to, like, we always want to be constantly improving our service, constantly improving our teaching, the production quality, the website, everything.
Yeah.
So we're working on this major rebrand of Think Vitamin membership, and we don't want to share a ton of details right now, but it's going to be pretty awesome. So we're constantly improving our service, and the feedback has been really positive so far. But when it's not positive, we get in there and we deal with it. We make sure that we fix the problem and make it right.
Yeah, the thing about clients being your customers is they're not always going to tell you when you're screwing up or
Right.
if they don't like something that you're doing. And for me, sort of the customer, the user component is super important. And part of what we're going for with the whole rebrand, with the whole redesign, is a better user experience. And a component of that is doing user testing and actually taking a look at what users are doing, how they're using things, and making improvements based on that.
And what's great about today is that, if somebody is upset about something and they complain about it on the internet, you can find out right away. If you're listening to the right channel.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious about, are there
Yep.
specific social media policies that are sort of enforced in the Carsonified world, or is it kind of, just be smart about it, or say this, don't say that? Is there any of that, or like only spend 20 minutes a day on Facebook or something funny like that?
We're laughing right now.
I see you got a
no.
Facebook friend in the background
So
there.
Yeah, so basically, Ryan Carson is like the coolest boss ever.
Ever,
He just really trusts us, and I think he's able to trust people because he makes really good hires. He really makes sure that
Naturally.
somebody is going to fit the company culture well, and he makes sure that somebody is just going to be able to want to do the best possible job at what it is that they're doing.
Yeah.
So that allows us to just trust people a lot. Like, for example, we have a 4-day work week where we work Monday through Thursday, and then we get a 3-day weekend every weekend. And that's because
What planet are
Ryan
you on?
is
That's
able
amazing.
to Well, it's because Ryan is able to trust us to get our work done.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what you have to do in a week, and you have 4 days to do it, and however you make that happen
Just do
is
it.
your
Yeah.
responsibility. One of our, in our core values that we recently put together, we said that we really own our mistakes. So Carsonified emphasizes personal responsibility a lot. So basically, if you step out of line, then, you just not do that next time.
Yeah.
Like,
The other-
it's pretty simple and straightforward, actually.
Yeah, the other side to the social media component is I think one of our other values is just to be real, to be authentic and who you are, and if you're kind of weird, whatever, you know, post it on Twitter.
Right.
We're going to take another question now. So from
cool.
GD Ford Live, what's the best way to improve your web design skills?
Well, practice, of course.
Just design some websites.
Yeah.
I think the most important
It's
thing
not
that
like,
you can do,
you know, battle people with nunchucks in the shadows or anything like that.
I wish web design was that cool and glamorous.
For some of us. But
Go
on.
I don't know what you do. Yeah, basically just make websites. The most important thing that you can do to improve your skills is just experience different weird situations. Just pick a project and start doing it and see it through to completion. That's a really difficult thing to do sometimes, but because all of us, you know, we start projects and then we never finish them. If you can stick with something and see it through to completion, like just say like, you know what, I could use WordPress or Tumblr, but I just want to learn how to make my own blog from scratch. You'll learn so much through that experience, and a blog might seem really simple, but something like WordPress is actually quite complex by this point. You know, all the features that they have built out for it, it's going to be tough to build on your own. But if you do reinvent the wheel and you try to build something from scratch when you're first starting out like that, you'll learn so much. You'll just run into so many weird problems that you just never even anticipated before.
Yeah.
I think another way to improve web design skills is to, you know, read voraciously, see what other people in the web design community are doing, go to events so you can keep up with the latest cutting edge stuff that maybe isn't even published in books or being talked about online yet.
Yeah.
And just keep designing, talk to your peers, you know, just stay motivated and stay in it.
The community component it keeps that fire alive.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're really passionate about it, it helps you want to learn all the time, which is great. And a huge part of why I keep making things and doing stuff is kind of to show off to the community and to get feedback and to participate. And even if you're a seasoned web designer, every time I make something just for myself, I learn something new. If I just did my job, I probably wouldn't amp up my skills the way that I would want to. So I think it's important, even if you know what you're doing already, to try new stuff, to learn new things. If you hear about this cool JavaScript library or whatever that you want to try out, make the time to do it.
Yep.
Looks like we've got another video question from Paul Stoney, so let's see if we can bring him on really quick. Paul is a seasoned DesignChat veteran from upstate New York. So what's going on, Paul?
Hello.
Love the look.
Hey. Thanks. So as designers, even if a 4-day work week, we always want to take on more projects and more projects. So it may be 4 days a week, but there's always so much more we want to do. And then we still have to try and have a life. So how do you guys try and balance that?
I guess I can start out. So video production is crazy. Like, and we produce videos, so we're sort of learning as we go along and trying to scale our team or scale the workload to a 4-day work week, because that's really something that we value very highly. The 4-day work week isn't about an extra day off. It's so much more than that, because you're changing the ratio of week to weekend from a 5-to-2 ratio to a 4-to-3 ratio, which, when you put it that way, is actually quite huge. Just having an extra day off allows you to kind of decompress and reflect on the week and think about, you know, what you did right, what you did wrong, and how you can improve next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's totally true. Having periods, even if it's
Hey, Paul,
just
hold on 1
vacation.
second. Sorry to interrupt. Paul, that was a great question. I'm going to drop your feed, though, really quick, because your fan sounds like your computer's going to take off your desk. So thanks for coming on.
Oh.
I'll let Allison finish now.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
mean, sometimes as a designer, it's almost easy to forget the importance of just relaxing. You don't have ideas when you're constantly using your brain and making things. I mean, you need to let them come to you, and you need to have periods that you sort of block off where you let that happen. And I think when you think of it in that context, when it's kind of like, okay, this is for my creative benefit, it's a little bit easier to say, all right, I'll put down the mouse, at least for now.
It's really hard when you just love your work so much. Like, I just... You know,
We all have that,
I know we work. We're just so passionate. You know, we work more than we probably should. So sometimes I just have to cut myself off, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna play video games now and not think about any of that stuff. So, but the 4-day work week
Favorite video game? What are you playing right now?
I'm playing Bulletstorm, and it is so much fun. Have you heard of this? Oh.
I've heard about it. I just heard a review, but I haven't seen gameplay or anything like that yet.
It's bad.
It's really, really awesome.
But he's playing StarCraft too.
Yeah, I'm really into StarCraft. Actually, my girlfriend and I are going to South Korea this summer to go see StarCraft matches live. Like,
yeah, it's like a big part of the culture there. Like, isn't it? I've heard like crazy things about that. Like people not taking care of their babies because they're playing friggin' StarCraft and stuff like that.
I mean, it's on the level of like any other sport in that country. It's on the level of like basketball or baseball or whatever. And there's multi-million-dollar sponsorships. There's television stations that nothing but StarCraft. Like, it's this whole upside down like nerd fantasy land. And I'm really lucky because. I'm really lucky because my girlfriend is super into it too. So we're gonna go to Korea and just like see it live. It's gonna be awesome.
That's awesome. Hey guys, I just noticed we've got like 7 minutes left in the chat here, and there's 3 text questions and 1 video question to get to. So I'm gonna burn through these really quick here. Trino Alvarez wants to know: have you guys done any GUIs for any desktop application?
Nothing of note. Yeah.
Sorry.
Next question. Great question, Tina. Mitch Smith wants to know: is it a bad idea for a design student to pay someone to design their personal portfolio site? I'm going to answer this for you. Yes. That's a horrible idea.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yep. Next question. Jim Hoskins wants to know: as a designer, do you handle communication with your devs, and how awesome is your developer? Jim Hoskins is sitting 10 feet away from you, isn't he?
Yeah, he's sitting like
Let's
right
put him on
here.
camera if we could.
Yeah, well,
I think he should come on camera and ask that damn question.
Everything's gonna turn red. There it is.
It's right there, man.
So, as much of a troll as Jim is, that's actually a really good question. So
he's doing this. The
relationship,
like he won something.
The relationship between designers and developers is just essential to establish well. It's so important that the designer and the developer are constantly communicating. And actually, on DocType, that's why we dedicate a section to web design and a section to web development every week, because it's not one or the other. Like, you can't say, like, well, without the developer, like, you would never be able to do anything, because the same is true for the designer. Like, it goes both ways, so it's not one or the other.
Yeah.
And there's nothing written in stone that says a designer can't code and a developer can't design. There's plenty of overlap to be had there and things to learn from one another too.
I sometimes hear this kind of attitude where designers will say, oh, I hate that my developer does this or that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to think of that relationship as just this awesome bond where you both make cool stuff together. Every developer that I've worked with, that I've had a strong partnership with, like, those are all just some of the favorite relationships that I've ever had in my life. Like, it's just so cool that you can work with someone and maybe try to understand their process a little bit, have them try to understand yours. You learn a lot from each other, you communicate, and you build. And I think that recognizing that is important.
Yeah, definitely.
Video question from Hersan Rodriguez. I hope I'm saying your name right. Please tell me if I'm an idiot.
No, yeah. Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, it's
Hey,
you almost
how
got
you
it. It's
doing?
Person. Good.
Person.
Good.
Person. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Well, my question, I have two questions. One question is, I'm a graphic designer. Actually in school right now, taking my last quarter.
Very cool.
But I really love. I mean, I love web design. And I've designed like some webs, just design on my own. I can't code, for nothing. Even though I took a class on it, but I just can't do it. And I really want to get into it. And a friend actually told me about you guys' website, and I'm looking to join. My question was, in average, how long would it take from just start from scratch completely to like just building a website? It might not be
Well, as soon
the best
as-
website, but just from start to finish.
I mean, the actual videos will walk you through how to do it. So as soon as
Yeah.
you start watching the videos, you're coding in this window, you're watching the videos, and you're starting to learn. So I think it's just, I mean, you want to work at your own pace, but for every video that you watch, you do a little bit more, you practice a little more, and you start getting somewhere.
Yeah, you should be able to get there pretty quickly. It really depends on the pace that you want to set for yourself.
Right.
If you just want to,
Right.
burn through everything in like 2 weeks and just really get into it, you can do that. If you'd rather take a more measured approach, then, whatever suits your style. But yeah, so does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, completely.
Cool.
Well, I asked just because my life right now is crazy since I'm almost done with school and doing internships and
Oh,
my
yeah.
other job, and I do want to have time to go and learn. So that's just my
Oh, yeah.
question.
I can
Yeah.
tell you have that
Person,
passion
you can
there,
sleep
so
when you're dead.
good start.
That's how that goes. So, thanks for coming on and asking a question, man. I hope to see you on the Design Chat again in the future, and good luck with school.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good luck, man.
Bye.
But cool. So now is the time where we turn those tables. Have you guys have
All
a good
right.
question for the audience?
You seem like you think of one.
I have a question.
Relying on Nick.
So I said we both said what we think is the future of web design, or at least the immediate future, and now I'm really curious to know what other people think. Where do you think web design is going in the next year with all of these transitional technologies, or this technology transition that we're going through right now with HTML5 and CSS3? I'm just curious what people think. Like, is it really going to be technology driven that drives design, or is it going to be bending the rules as far as we can and just letting design drive everything? So what do you guys think?
PeopleSoft
What
says
is the
it's the
future of
death
web
of
design?
Flash.
So
So the question is, future of web design within the next year. You can be very specific about that, or you can be broad as in the next 50 years. If you've got a good answer, type it in as a question. Click on the light bulb icon, type it in, and we'll submit it and put it on the video. But other than that, if you've just got an idea, you can pop it in the chat room. Paul Stonia says semantic markup is wonderful. Standards will become more important from ink.media. Bending and design. I'm curious about what that means. Bending and design. We can bend code or something like that. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
With our minds.
HTML5, CSS3 will give us the most coolest apps. 88 cents Crunchwrap. I can't read that fast. Oh, we've got one in the text question. Harrison. Bending and design.
Bending and
Please
design.
explain yourself. We have no idea what that means. He's into stretching. He's into yoga. It's yoga and
Right,
design at the same time. There'll be Yoga Design Olympics.
I was
I
going to
can see
say
that.
it's important to find your center when you're coding. It's I have no idea what bending and means. Nick said it. He said, "Okay, I
He
guess
said
that's
Nick
it."
said it. Core code.
All right.
Oh, there we go. Cool.
What are you talking about, Nick? No one understands you.
I have no idea.
Well, here's my answer to that question, or at least I don't
Yeah.
think it's what the future is going to be, but I think it's what my hope. And if anybody's seen the show, you've heard me talk about the subject before. So we've got all of these web languages that can do these amazing things, right? But there is this gap, and we talked about it all night, about how somebody who is in the creative development part can get into the coding, right? Well, we saw part of this happen when, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I think it was, when Photoshop came out. Well, you could make images on your computer by coding things in, but then some computer scientist took coding and graphical interface, mashed them up, and we got Photoshop. There's an interface. There's something we can touch and drag and understand. My hope is that in the near future, somebody picks up, and I know these coding languages change so fast, it might not happen very soon. Somebody picks up on that idea and mashes these two together where we get it. It doesn't have to be a WYSIWYG sort of thing, because I know these things are really tough, but a better interface for people who don't code to create web applications and web design quicker and faster and with less issues. It's such a pain in the butt right now. And I think the person, the company, if it's Adobe, whoever, who makes that interface, makes that app, they win, right? They win the web. They win the internet, because amazing things can happen then.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Tumblr has taken a really good stab at it with their templating engine. It's totally awesome. You can make a blog really easily, but at the same time, you can customize it to, however you want it to look. Another thing that I think is going to be an upcoming issue is just using HTML5 and CSS3. Right now, you just have to basically hand code everything, but Adobe and several other companies are developing tools that will allow you to use HTML5 and CSS3 more effectively. The name of that tool is escaping me at the moment, but there's some really cool stuff that's coming out there. So it looks like we have an audience question. Maybe? No?
No, I was just popping up some of the things that people were saying in answer to that.
Okay, cool.
That were kind of interesting. But we are at the end of our hour. It's past 9 o'clock, so I just want to thank you guys, Allison and Nick, so much for coming on and telling us about yourselves and representing Carsonified and telling us so much. So thank you again for that. I want to announce, so next week we're going to be talking to the people at Rule 29, Justin Ahrens, and we are going to be broadcasting from their office to talk about a new documentary they filmed in Africa. So very exciting. That's going to be a lot of fun. And so please join us for that. And on Twitter, they can follow you guys at Allison_house and at Nick RP. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Awesome.
At Nick
Great. Awesome.
RP.
Thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Us.
It's been a pleasure.
And
really.
thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys.